Sense of Soul.
Hey Soul Seekers, it's Shanna. Journey with me to discover how people around the world awaken to their true sense of soul. Now go grab your coffee and open your mind, heart, and soul.
It's time to awaken.
Today on Sense of Soul, I have Sheila Seppi and Barbara Lamb. They're the authors of the book Cosmic Convergence. For in the kaleidoscope of human experience, where the boundaries of reality blur and the mysteries of the cosmos beckon, there exists a phenomenon that challenges the very fabric of our understanding, the emergence of walk-ins, starseeds, and hybrids. Sheila is the founder of the Conscious Awakening Network and Spirit Way Wellness. She is an author and international speaker, event coordinator, multidimensional life coach, holographic alchemist, light language linguist, a regression therapist, shamanic practitioner, and spiritual teacher. Barbara is a licensed psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and regression therapist. She is an author and is considered to be one of the world's leading authorities in the field of ufology and extraterrestrial contact. She has given hundreds of interviews for television programs, including Ancient Aliens. She has received 5 Lifetime Achievement Awards from 5 major conferences for her work in giving help and support to experiencers of ET contact and furthering the field of ufology. And they're here today to tell us about their co-creation, their book, Cosmic Convergence. So please welcome Sheila and Barbara. You know, there's always a story behind how we got to where we are. So do you want to start, Sheila?
Okay.
How did you meet Barbara? How about we start that?
So I had met Barbara in Laughlin, Nevada at a conference, and I had found out through a conversation with her that she was going to be on Gaia TV and would be in the Boulder area. And because I live relatively close to Boulder, I live in Leadville, I said, Barbara, do you have time for another regression? And so I got on her books, I went to see her, and that's how, that was really our first meeting. And the cool thing about that was, I'm a walk-in. And so I was always seeking a little additional information about that. And so through Barbara's work, she helped to bring a little bit more clarity for me on the walk-in situation, because I had been a very, very sick person. And I had been diagnosed with bone cancer, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I used to walk with a cane, had the beginning stages of rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, you name it. I mean, if it was anything to do with autoimmune, I had it. And I went to bed that way. And the next morning, it felt like someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of the head, pulled me bolt right up, and it was like lightning ran through my body. And then I was in white space. And as I began to come out of that white space, my peripheral vision came in first, and then my frontal vision. And from there, everything was the same, but everything was different. And so I began to experience immediate clairvoyance, clairaudient, clairsentient. I had all kinds of memories about universal truths and past lives. And the important thing about that is I didn't believe in past lives when I went to bed. And I had all different types of healing modalities running through my mind. I didn't realize it at the time that I was a walk-in. And I also did not realize at the time that I was instantaneously healed from all of those diseases. And so that always left some questions in my mind. And people had said, oh, you should go be hypnotized. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. I just didn't feel like I wanted someone going there with me until I met Barbara. And Barbara's style is so professional, and she's so genuine and so sweet. When I met her, I was like, okay, yes, Barbara, can I have a session?
Oh, I was so glad you did.
And Barbara,
kind of a long story about how I got into doing this work, but I'll try to keep it short. I became a licensed psychotherapist way back in 1976. And then in the mid 1980s, I started 5 years of training as a past life regression therapist. And then a few years later, in 1991, a woman came to me for regressions, a woman who'd had very unusual beings visiting her at night. There wasn't a name for her. We didn't use the word alien or extraterrestrial, but that's what they turned out to be. And anyway, after 6 sessions with her, it was very obvious that she was having a lifelong encounter with these beings and had been healed on 2 of the occasions that we did a regression to. And she turned out to go from being totally traumatized to being very open about these visitations and, actually even looking forward to more. So that really, really opened my eyes for sure that there is this reality, this phenomenon of what we call extraterrestrial beings coming to Earth and meeting with people, very often taking them on board their spaceships, or sometimes just working with the person right here in the person's home. So that opened the way for my thinking, well, if anybody else ever comes for that sort of reason, I can handle that. And with all my regression experience that I had already done and to past lives. So that started it all. And then through the years, there have been many, many people, few thousand people, who've come for regressions for that particular reason, to find out about the experiences that they've had with these other beings. And usually they remember just a very few moments of the beginning of the experience, or in many cases, they don't remember it at all, except that there are lots of little clues that something unusual has happened. And very often they want to find out what that is. And so we do a regression to the source of those particular clues, like little markings on the body and so forth. So anyway, it has opened up a tremendous amount of work and interest. And along the way, even very early in the 1990s, I worked with a young woman who was a walk-in, and I had heard about that phenomenon from a past life therapy colleague. And then another one came and another through the years. So that got me, very interested and fairly acquainted with the phenomenon of walk-in people. So when I met Sheila a few years ago, and she mentioned that she was a walk-in, I thought, oh, good. Not only did I like Sheila right away, but I thought, oh, good, I can learn more about walk-ins. And then Starseeds had been coming all along, but before I even knew there was a name for Starseeds, but there certainly were people here and there who came who were obviously here in life for service to others. And eventually I put that together with the whole concept of people, certain people, being starseeds. And then the hybrids, that whole issue has come up a lot in these regressions from very, very early on. I realized that some of these people I was working with had hybrid children. Some of them had quite a number of hybrid children. And in some of the regressions, it would take us to revisiting a time when they had actually been on the ship with their own hybrid children. And those are all, a little bit different for everybody in terms of their experience and how they reacted to that. But anyway, that whole idea, realization about hybrids has gone on now since the early 1990s in my awareness, gone on, of course, in reality before that. So when Sheila approached me some months ago about collaborating on a book about walk-ins, starseeds, and hybrids, I immediately thought, oh, that would be great because I'm so experienced and so interested in those particular aspects. So the hybrids that we have been featuring more in the book Cosmic Convergence, those hybrids are the ones who actually are people living here on Earth and were born here. They live their whole life here. They do not live on a spaceship, although they visit a spaceship a lot with the beings who gave them their genetics. So we go into that in quite detail, that whole phenomenon of the hybridization in the book. Sheila had asked me to give some case studies from my work, and that was really a wonderful process to kind of go back over through many of the cases of people I had worked with in regression. So we give summaries of about 5, or in some cases 6, cases for each of those 3 categories: the walk-ins, the starseeds, and the hybrids. So that kind of brings it right down to the human level. And I am guessing that a lot of readers of Cosmic Convergence might identify with one of those 3 categories of people. And there are a lot of people out there, I think, who are wondering, I wonder if I've had any of those experiences with the other beings, or I wonder if I could be a starseed. I relate to a lot of what they talk about in Cosmic Convergence, and the same with hybrids. I think walk-ins, of course, could recognize themselves if they are a walk-in, but that's a substantially different in the sense that suddenly that life changed, as Sheila was explaining.
What is a walk-in? I've actually tried to pull it out of people before, and I've never really gotten a clear answer. So I'm super excited to have you both today.
It is your one to give that.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so there are many different types of walk-ins, and I'll start with the type that I am. And I always start by telling people, if this experience had not happened to me, I don't know if someone had told me about it, if I would even believe something like this is possible, because it is so far out of the norm and the things that we're raised and told about. But for me, because I was a sick person, when I was in that white space, whether it was a near-death experience, a death experience, whatever that was, my soul, the original soul, or what we call the natal soul of the body, left, and a brand new soul came in. Now, not brand new as far as information. A brand new soul could come in straight from source that's never incarnated, but I had incarnated before and was part of a collective. We also have what's called like step downs or step ins, and they're very similar to soul exchanges because they are one soul out and another soul in. However, whereas a soul exchange permanently occupies the body, these step downs or step ins temporarily swap. So they come in and then they leave and another soul comes in, and then they leave and another soul comes in. Now, I know for me, it was difficult enough to integrate the single soul aspect or the collective aspect that I brought in, but I can't imagine what people go through that integrate, and then all of a sudden they have another soul come in, and then they have to integrate, and then another soul comes in, because that's kind of akin to like being celestially orchestrated. It's like this divine dance of the souls. We also have what's called a soul infusion. And a lot of people get confused with this particular one because, number one, right now on the planet, because of all the hard work people are doing on themselves, all the spiritual work that people are doing, they're raising their own vibration, and they're able to bring in more and more of their higher self aspect. Well, when you have a walk-in soul infusion, what happens is a lot of the natal soul leaves, and you have more infusion come in. So it's kind of like a partial walk-in soul exchange, if you will. It's an augmentation regular than a complete soul exchange. Then you also have what's called soul mergers. Now, these resemble a soul infusion, but they're very different in that the natal soul remains intact, and you have a complete aspect, like we were talking about with infusions, only you have a complete aspect of self, or the Shantias Khan, which we can talk about in a minute, that come in and they infuse with the soul. Then these are very interesting types of walk-ins. They're called soul jumpers or pop-ins or poppers. And they refer to a soul that comes in for a brief span of time. Sometimes it can be a few hours to a few days, weeks, or even a month. But they're very brief interchanges between the soul. And what happens is these energies begin to intertwine for a very short period of time. But they really imprint a ton of information into the cellular memory of the person. And so when they leave, all of a sudden, the person feels like something's missing. And the people that I've talked to say they almost have a yearning for that kind of a soul interaction to come back, because it was so profound while they were here. Then there's what's called a soul overlay. Now, a soul overlay can either be permanent or temporary. And if this is the soul of a body, another soul comes in and literally lays over top of it, kind of like a neoprene suit. It just fits right over the top. Now, this can serve as a battery charger, basically, for the soul to give new information, because souls do get weary in these bodies, especially if they think they've taken on a little bit more. Once you get into the earth experience, it's a little tougher than it looks when you're on the other side. So it can either serve as a battery charger, or they can merge together. Or it can serve as a placeholder. So it keeps the body animated. The original soul leaves, but then it comes back. Then this is a very unique type of walk-in that I've just learned about, because I've met some people who tell me that they are this type of a walk-in. And that's where they have an off-planet, or what most people would call to as an extraterrestrial being that's projecting their soul into human form. Now, we have a lot of souls that are star beings, but most of the time they come in at birth. But this is where the soul leaves and a total projection comes in for a period of time. It leaves, and then the original soul can come back. Then one of the most common types that people also have talked about are soul braids. And this is where you have one or more souls that inhabit the body, and they literally braid together. Now, they typically possess like their own autonomy, but they work very symbiotically together. And then you have what's called the soul layering. And that's when you inhabit the soul. When the soul inhabits the body, that is, it brings in multiple layers. And throughout life, those layers begin to wake up and other layers begin to come in. And so that's a very, very unique type. But I have met people who have that. And sometimes we can also refer to those as collectives because an individual will carry more than just an individual soul energy. But that typically happens after that soul has progressed to at least a seventh density layer, and it begins at certain layers of our soul progression. It no longer is individuated. It begins to join with like minds, almost like going back into the soul groups or the soul families, but they merge together as one. And that is the scenario that I came from when I entered the body. I didn't know it at first. I didn't even know I was a walk-in. And if someone had told me the day it happened, I wouldn't have believed it anyway. I had to live it and experience it for myself. And fortunately, or maybe you could say unfortunately, what happened to me is I thought I was having some type of a mental breakdown because of all the illness and the job. And, I had 3 kids and a dysfunctional marriage. And I thought it had just gotten the best of me. I had studied psychology in college. And so I began to self-diagnose, which is a dangerous thing to do. But I had convinced myself that I had a psychotic break because I did not come in with the memories of this body. I came in with my own memories. Everything was blank, except I knew I had 3 children. I knew I loved them. I had a few little sparse memories here and there about them. I knew I had parents. I knew I loved them, and that was it. I had no connection to anyone else in my life. And so because of that, I began to self-diagnose that I had had some type of severe trauma that had occurred in my life, and I was having, a dissociative disorder, or I was becoming schizophrenic. So after I left the husband, that was 3 months. There was another 3 months that passed, and I moved to a different state where I accepted a job. I was looking in the back of the phone directory because in 99, early 2000s, Google was not the rage as it is now. So I was looking in the back of the phone book, and all of a sudden, there was like this business size card ad that really caught my attention. It was almost like a light was shining on it, and it was for spiritual counseling, and that felt very comfortable to me. And I called immediately. The next day she returned my phone call, and within 2 or 3 days I was sitting in her office and sharing my story, because honestly I went there hoping that she could just write a prescription, give me a pill, and I could pop it and my life would go back to normal, because I was very comfortable in that dysfunction. I didn't know how, I didn't understand or know what was going on with me. And so over a series of meetings, though, she said, I have to say, I cannot find any psychosis present. I cannot find that you're having a dissociative disorder or this or that, because I gave her a list of things that I thought I was experiencing when I went in there, and she had systematically crossed them off the list. And so she is the one that introduced me to the concept of walk-ins, because she was of Hopi lineage. She had already known about walk-ins. She was taught about walk-ins from her grandmother, and she herself was a walk-in. And so that was the beginning of my understanding of the term. Then accepting that I was a walk-in took quite a long time for me to be able to do. But you also have to remember, when I came into that very sick body, it's kind of like, when you come into it, you buy a used car. You have to change things out, because I still had all the cellular memory, all the ancestral genetics. I had everything that had been imprinted, the epigenetics of the previous soul, in addition to the epigenetics of the current family lineage. And so there was a lot of clearing that had to happen. Behavioral patterns, for one thing, thought forms, etc. And so as I began to clear that up, my children were getting older and older. And as all of these things began to clear, that I was able to bring in more and more of my soul essence to begin to imprint on the cellular structure of the body, so that this body then, at this point, this body is my body. I mean, I still have the genetics, obviously, of the family, and there's things that come up all the time that I'm like, oh, thought I had that cleared. Here's another layer. And then I can have things that occur in my life, and I can look at that family and I can say, oh, I'm clearing this for this person because I'm experiencing the exact situation they're going through. And they're going like, going crazy with it. And I'm like, okay, I can walk through this with ease and grace. And as I do, I'm able to clear that aspect, and I can notice that they begin to calm down as well.
Barbara, how would you identify that this person was a walk-in when you would have them under hypnosis? Like you just mentioned all of those. I mean, wow, Sheila, my brain was about to explode. There's so many different kinds, which I'm sure took a long time to get to know all of those different facets of a walk-in.
Well, sometimes people will come to me with the puzzling report that life is just so different for them now. Mm-hmm. And that they will describe what their life was and who they were, up to a certain point. And then suddenly they were very, very different. And so, that raises the question immediately in my mind, could this person possibly be a walk-in? So when we do the regression, I always try to keep the focus of the regression, the question that the person is wondering about. I try to keep that neutral, and not make assumptions. Mm-hmm. An assumption with some people could be, oh, this must be a walk-in. But I have that in my mind. And as we discuss the person's life and the changes that they've made, I might, in my own mind, build up more and more an idea that this person might be a walk-in. But in the regression, as I said, I try to keep it very neutral on my part, not give leading suggestions that they are this or that. But in the regression, if that seems to be the lurking question, it will come out that there was a particular moment when this change happened. So the interesting thing about that, from my point of view, is that in that kind of regression, I get both points of view at pretty much the same time or in the same session. In other words, the point of view of the person who was the natal soul, as Sheila expresses it. In other words, the original person living here who really doesn't want to be here any longer. And then we also get the experience from the point of view of the soul, the walk-in, who came in to that person's body. And it seems to happen very, very quickly, the actual event as it's come into my awareness anyway, through these regressions. So, I mean, in other words, for maybe a long time, the person was ill or having all kinds of very unfavorable circumstances to live with. And then the soul, of course, has been looking around for someone to do this exchange with, so that the walk-in soul can be here and help humanity by serving in a number of different ways. I think it's just a really brilliant thing that can happen. Doesn't want to be here. I've just had it, and doesn't want to commit suicide, but still having that feeling, what's the point? I just don't want to be here anymore. So that soul gets released from the body, from the lifetime that it doesn't really want to be in, and goes into the spirit realm. In other words, nobody's being killed here. So, I mean, isn't it a wonderful thing? I never knew about this growing up. I never knew about this, probably until the early 1990s or so. And I just respect very much this process.
Is it mutual and agreeable?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, is there a choice?
Yes. It's just wonderful. It's a very favorable exchange that has been totally agreed upon. And I
Okay.
think it's wonderful that those two souls of the person being here who doesn't want to be here and the incoming soul who wants to have a body and a life to live in order to do the service that they would like to do here. Yeah, it's very different than a possession. We hear about that with some of the really creepy, dramatic stories that have been put out there in the media, because it's not one soul insisting on coming in and just taking over without agreement, which is what you find in the cases of possession.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to distinguish that, because the walk-in situation is totally mutually agreed upon.
Is it always for your highest good?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, always. When you have a walk-in, you carry, well, first, the body carries a certain vibrational frequency. When a walk-in comes in, it is always a higher vibration. Now, if even someone who has had a walk-in soul is having a rough period in life, or if they start, let's say, dabbling in things that are not of the highest good, it can begin to lower the vibration. But when the walk-in comes in, it's always higher. When that vibration is lowered, then we open ourselves up for another vibrational frequency match of a lower entity that
Ooh.
can come in the form of a possession. However, you also have to realize we live literally next door to the astral realm. That lower astral realm is all around us. That's the place of the disincarnate spirits. Our guides are there. The lower astral realm doesn't mean that it's the low place or anything like that. It's just that lower aspect. That middle aspect is where the halls of learning are, and the upper aspect is what people call paradise or heaven. And there's so much more beyond that. However, in the case of living this close to the astral, when the veil is thin, a lot of people can see into that. They see spirits, they see what they say are ghosts, or they see their loved ones, or they see their spirit guides, or whatever. That's because that's right here with us. Now, if someone's vibration is low and you have a disincarnate spirit that comes in, maybe they're not necessarily malevolent, but maybe they also are not there for that person's highest good. They saw an opportunity to hitchhike, or they saw the opportunity to enter the body and to kind of take control. And a lot of those energies don't actually enter into the physical form, but they're out here in the field. And because they are, and especially if they get into this etheric template, which is the closest of our etheric bodies, if they get into that etheric template, then they can begin to control the person as if they are the person.
Amazing cases that I learned about when I had some training in spirit releasement back in the 1980s. Incoming spirit from that lower realm that Sheila is talking about can attach to the person sort of really in the outside, in the aura of the body, or can actually come in and live in the body. But the good thing about that is that even though that incoming spirit can really seriously influence the person, as an example, the incoming attaching or indwelling spirit might have been addicted to something, like, for instance, alcohol. So the person who gets to be the host, shall we say, to this other one, the person becomes addicted suddenly to that substance, to alcohol or whatever. And there have been some notable cases that I've known of didn't work with personally, but knew of, where an 11-year-old girl, for instance, who never thought anything about alcohol, her parents would have a drink if somebody would come over for a visit, and then not in between. But she suddenly was raiding the cupboard of the parents, the alcohol cupboard, and becoming totally addicted herself. 11 years old. It got to be a really serious problem with her. She was going and robbing alcohol stores, mom and pop alcohol stores. It was really a big problem in the family. And then she had a spirit releasement session, and that addicted entity, spirit, soul, left. And she no longer had any interest whatsoever in drinking alcohol. So, yeah, but the walk-in situation is really different. I think it's important to really make that point. That is with mutual agreement of the soul and both souls, and for totally good reasons, benevolent reasons to help. The beings, like Sheila, the beings who have been in another realm, another dimension, another frequency, in some cases, another planet, another species, like extraterrestrial species. They cannot, in that form, they cannot come to Earth and live here and give the service that they would like to give to humanity. Instead of doing that, one of the ways that they kind of get to be here to help is to create hybrids who will live here totally, be born here, live a whole life seemingly as a total human being, but having a lot of extraterrestrial genetics. Those hybrids can do the work here that the other beings would like to do. And it's the same thing with the walk-ins, basically, that the other soul wants very much to be here to help humanity and cannot, as a soul, wherever that soul is, whatever dimension or type of area, cannot come here and serve humanity. So they do the walk-in situation. And then they get to be here for the rest of that life doing the service that they want to do.
You know, my collective very specifically told me that I was coming in, you know, to be a way shower, as many of us are, as you are, Barbara is, but that I was considered boots on the ground, you know, because there's only so much, because my collective is still working in the crystalline grid area and working with the collective consciousness of humanity. But that's an ethereal job. Okay. So there's only so much that can be done there. But here, when we can have these one-on-one conversations, I think that we're making a huge impact.
Like your book. Like, I can't wait to read it because I want to, look at things. And how much does it help when you're having relationships with people who may have experienced this, where you're like, oh my God, this explains so much. This is what happened to my partner or my child.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons I wrote another book also, and called Walk-ins, Cosmology of the Soul. And I wanted to expand upon it because so many people had written to me and said that it had been so impactful for them to have something like a lifeline thrown at them. And in this book, we expanded it to include the starseeds and the hybrids as well, because the reality of it is, this is the out of the box conversations that we're having. A lot of people are not being provided this kind of information to help them understand that what they're going through actually is the new norm. When I came in 99, you couldn't find anything. There was one book about walk-ins, and I refused to read it. I didn't want anything. I didn't want anything to do with it at the time. But the reality, there wasn't the internet. We couldn't research. There were, everything that happened, we had to learn for ourselves. Now there's such a plethora of information, but not all of it is really good information, and it still leaves people, asking a lot of questions. So we really tried to put a lot of information in as few pages as possible, condensing it down. So
Yeah.
it's not something that's so massive that people are going to get overwhelmed when they pick it up. And in the front of it, we even break down like, what is a density versus a dimension? What is a timeline? What is a holographic grid of the body? What are you talking about with ley lines of the body? So that people can begin to understand. It's very clear and very concise. They can pick it up, they can read it, a chapter, and put it down and digest it. You don't become overwhelmed. It's not hundreds of pages per chapter, but the information is very, very rich to where people, I think, will be able to find a lot of the answers to the questions that they've been asking.
Ooh, this is a good book. I'm excited about this.
I tell you, every time I pick it up, I'm like, this is so good. I wish I had had this 20 years ago. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have walked around for years and years and years having to do this research and thinking that I was crazy. Here's a book that can help people to bypass a lot of that.
What's the difference between a hybrid and a starseed? Is there a difference or is it the same?
The hybrid actually has genetics in the body from one extraterrestrial species or maybe a few extraterrestrial species combined. A starseed had been an extraterrestrial in previous lifetimes and is here as a human now, but without the actual physical genetics. But the hybrids actually have genetics that are from these other beings.
I had a past life regression once where I didn't have feet. I had webbed feet and webbed hands. And I knew what I was, and I was very uncomfortable in my skin, and I didn't know what to think about it.
Well, I know it can be very baffling, but probably all of us human beings, or most of us probably, have been other types of beings on other planets, well, extraterrestrial, in previous lifetimes. Maybe lifetimes long, long ago. And we've had many previous lifetimes here on Earth. But most of us, maybe all of us, I don't know, may have been extraterrestrials in previous lifetimes. And sometimes those forms of life, like you mentioned, webbed feet, sometimes they're very, very different than the form that we're in now as humans. I think that, it really takes something to get used to that when you've raised your whole life thinking of only human beings. So now things are opening up so much for people to not only realize more in human society that we have had many, many previous lifetimes, maybe billions for all I know. And it's opening more to realize that there are other intelligent beings out there in space who look different than we do. In many cases, some look quite the way that we look as humans, but there is that. I mean, when I grew up, I had no concept whatsoever that there was any life anywhere else. I mean, I thought all life was totally contained to this planet Earth. And I think that even nowadays, probably young people are growing up basically with that idea, although because of all the media that we have and the movies and so forth and depictions of other kinds of beings and so forth, they get the idea more than I did in my generation, that's for sure. But I think a really good thing, a wonderful thing, that all of this is opening up so much more for people. And for people who are not wondering if they are different, in the sense of being a walk-in, a starseed, or a hybrid. I mean, I would imagine that most of humanity living here on Earth don't think about those things at all. I think our book is not only helpful for people who may be one of those three types we've been talking about, but for other people to suddenly realize, oh my goodness, there's so much more to reality than I had ever even imagined. I mean, this apparently is real. And I affirm, and Sheila affirms, yes, this is real. It's very exciting that you are wondering about yourself and are really learning. So this book could be so helpful for you. And also the book that I co-authored with Miguel Mendonça, which is called Meet the Hybrids.
Okay.
Or ET Ambassadors on Earth. Meet the Hybrids, 8 different case studies that we've shown in great detail, as well as an explanation of the whole phenomenon. That might be very, very helpful for you. And for
Okay.
somebody else kind of wondering about themselves.
Well, thank you. Because I've had another thing and it's been happening recently. I've seen people, I've done like over 500 episodes, but 6 times I've seen people change as I'm interviewing them. And they haven't all been the same, but I absolutely feel like I've seen quite a bit of them.
In the book, we also talk about the different types of souls where an individual soul could come from, as well as the inception of the soul and how we start with source and the various transitions that the soul will take before it enters into the human form. And, we all come from somewhere, whether it's directly from source, whether it's from extraterrestrials or, an interdimensional or dimensional being. We all come from somewhere. And, to circle back to the starseeds, they can either be directly from, and that in the truest sense of the form, that's what the starseed is. But so many of us are star seeds in the fact that we have this cornucopia of soul experiences that have come from one lifetime after another, whether we were in the angelic realm and the source realm, and then we became maybe a draconian, and now we're in a human form. We bring all of that knowledge, and that's the type of information that will imprint on us. And as we begin to work with our soul essences, we're able to then pull more and more of that information forward. And one of the cool things about what you're talking about experiencing is you're actually being able now to see, oh, maybe this soul came from X, Y, and Z. And that's kind of like that driving force within that body. So it doesn't matter the form. I've been, doing work with people before, and all of a sudden they turn into a Draco. And first time that happened, I literally jumped back in my seat because it was, I'm looking at this person and all of a sudden, bam, there they are. And I've had sessions where they'll show up behind them and those kinds of things because they're in the soul family. And so we have been so many different, had so many different types of experiences. And of course, in my opinion, that's what the collective tells me, that even this lifetime is all about. It's that growth of the soul to be able to have one experience after the other, regardless of what form that it takes or what color our skin is or what nationality or what planet we actually come from.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I really do like to have conversations that normalize this.
Yes,
because you can feel so alone in this journey. It feels so good when you're like, wow, I can relate to that, or that aligns with me, what you said, or that helps me understand, what I'm experiencing. God bless both of you for, putting this book out and coming on and talking about that. And do you guys have your own, I think, Sheila, do you have your own platform where you speak and share and teach? And Barbara, do you?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me, if somebody wanted to learn more or hear more of your experiences and teachings.
For me, I have a website, which has some podcasts on it and a lot of information. And the website is barbaralamregression.com. barbaralamregression.com. And I also have a YouTube channel, which has lots of podcasts on it about subjects such as we're talking about today and others that I just say unusual experiences, paranormal experiences that I have had and many other people have had too. So anyway, it's quite a range of interesting subjects. And that YouTube channel is Barbara Lamb ET Regressions with a S on the end of regressions, Barbara Lamb ET Regressions. So that's one of the ways that I get out there. And I have spoken at many, many, many conferences, particularly UFO conferences, and still slated to do more of that coming up.
How fun.
So I have a website, SheilaSeppi.com, SheilaSeppi.com, and you can find out pretty much everything that I do there. You can find me on YouTube, just type in my name. I don't have just a specific Sheila Seppi YouTube, but I do have what's called Cosmic Conversations, and I've been having conversations with people twice a week about different events that's going on in their life, different information that they're bringing forward. And so you can find that, and you'll find that on the Conscious Awakening Network. And I do have the consciousawakeningnetwork.org. We're in the process of upgrading and adding so many new features, from university to courses to you name it. We're very, very excited to have that as an offering for people. And so, if you're looking for this type of conversations that we've had, you can go to the website and find out other locations where you can find more information.
Awesome. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. I've really enjoyed both of you. And Sheila, we're in the same state.
I know, not too far away from each other. We'll have to get together, and I can bring you a copy of the book.
It's one of those ones I want in my hands. So yeah, I look forward to it. So it's out right now though, right? You can get the book.
People can find it on Amazon or on any other, major book platform.
You guys are both beautiful souls. I feel so honored to be in your presence. Thanks so much.
Thanks for the invitation to be here. It was amazing.
Yeah. Sense of Soul.
Thanks for listening to Sense of Soul podcast, and thanks to our special guest. If you want more of Sense of Soul, check out my website at senseofsoulpodcast.com.